More people died on this ship than died on the Titanic and the Lusitania combined. You have probably never heard her name. She was once called the Queen of the South Atlantic, the most beautiful ocean liner Germany ever built. Marble staircases, crystal ballrooms, a floating symbol of national pride. In May of 1945, days before the war in Europe officially ended, this ship became the site of one of the deadliest maritime disasters in human history. The dead were not soldiers. They were concentration camp survivors, and the bombs that killed them were dropped by the very pilots who were trying to end the war that had imprisoned them. This is the Cap Arcona. This is the disaster the world chose to forget. She was Germany's answer to Britain's great liners. Wealthy passengers crossed the Atlantic in extraordinary comfort, marble underfoot, crystal overhead, a vision of pre-war elegance that seemed at the time like it would last forever. Nothing does. In 1943, the Nazi propaganda ministry used the Cap Arcona to film a movie about the Titanic, a film designed to paint British capitalism as the true villain of that tragedy. The production was plagued by accidents. Several crew members died during filming. Even the Nazis seemed to sense something was wrong with this ship. They had no idea how right they were. By 1945, the Queen of the South Atlantic had been stripped of everything that once made her beautiful, repainted in naval grey, engines failing, reduced to a floating barracks for U-boat trainees, sitting idle in a Polish harbour, waiting out a war that everyone already knew was lost. In the spring of 1945, the Soviet army was advancing through Poland and eastern Germany with unstoppable momentum. The Third Reich was collapsing in real time. And as the front lines disintegrated, SS officials across the region faced a problem they had never planned for. Tens of thousands of concentration camp prisoners still under their control, and an advancing enemy that would soon see exactly what had been done to them. Hitler had reportedly given the order, no prisoner should survive to testify about what happened inside these camps. Rather than free the prisoners or simply leave them behind, SS commanders chose a third option, forced evacuation, what history now remembers as the death marches. Thousands of prisoners from the Neuengamme camp, along with prisoners from Stutthof and other camps, were forced onto trains and marched toward the Baltic coast. Many died along the way, from exhaustion, from starvation, from exposure, or from a guard's bullet when they could no longer keep pace. Those who survived the journey arrived in Lübeck in a state the human body should not be able to endure and still be called alive. By early May 1945, several ships sat anchored in Lübeck Bay, the Cap Arcona among them. Nobody arriving at that harbor that week could have known they were walking toward one ending instead of another. For some, these ships represented a chance at survival. For thousands of others, they would become a tomb. Between 7,000 and 9,000 prisoners, along with German civilians, guards and naval personnel, were loaded onto the Cap Arcona and several other vessels. The ship had never been prepared to carry passengers, let alone thousands of dying men and women. There was no food to speak of, no sanitation, no medical care. Just cargo holds never designed to hold human beings, now filled past any reasonable capacity with the most vulnerable people the war had produced. Survivors who lived to tell their stories described holds filled with the dying and the dead before the ship ever came under attack. Disease spread uncontrollably in the dark, airless spaces below deck. Many prisoners never saw daylight again after they were loaded onto this ship. They died in the dark, in the place they had been put, waiting for a liberation that was still days away. By May 3, 1945, Adolf Hitler had been dead for 3 days. Berlin had fallen to Soviet forces. The war in Europe was in every meaningful sense already over. And yet, in Lübeck Bay, the worst day of this disaster had not yet happened. That morning, Royal Air Force pilots from No. 83 Group took off on a routine mission to attack German shipping suspected of evacuating military personnel and fleeing Nazi officials toward Norway. These were experienced pilots flying Hawker Typhoon fighter bombers, acting on the best intelligence available to them. They had absolutely no reason to believe what was actually sitting in that harbor below them. From the air, the ships below were simply grey shapes on grey water. No Red Cross markings, no white flags, no way, none whatsoever, to know that the holds of these vessels were filled with concentration camp survivors instead of fleeing Nazi officials. The typhoons attacked. Rockets and cannon fire tore into the Cap Arcona's hull and superstructure. Fires ignited almost immediately and began spreading through decks never designed to withstand this kind of damage. Within minutes, the Lübeck, anchored nearby, was also struck. She would sink in less than 20 minutes, taking most of the people aboard her down with her. The Cap Arcona, once the most beautiful ship in the German merchant fleet, was now consumed by fire from within. Thousands of prisoners, already weakened by years of starvation and disease, had only one choice left: jump into the freezing waters of the Baltic Sea or burn. There was no third option. Many drowned almost immediately, too weak from years of imprisonment to swim or even to tread water. The Baltic Sea in early May offered no mercy. It was cold enough to kill a healthy man in minutes. For prisoners who weighed less than 90 pounds, it offered no chance at all. Some prisoners did reach the shore. According to numerous survivor testimonies, they were shot by SS guards stationed along the coastline, determined that no witness to the camps would survive to tell what they had seen. The liberators were still days away. For thousands of people, days were a length of time they did not have. In the end, between 6,000 and 9,000 people died across the ships attacked in Lübeck Bay that day, more than the Titanic and the Lusitania combined. The burned wreck of the Cap Arcona remained visible above the waterline for years afterward, a haunting rusted monument that local residents could not avoid seeing every single day. In the aftermath, the British government found itself in an impossible position. Allied pilots, acting in good faith, had killed thousands of concentration camp survivors days before the war's end. An unbearable irony for a military being celebrated worldwide as liberators. Many official records relating to the attack were classified and remained unavailable to the public for decades. To this day, no senior official has ever been formally held accountable for the decision that put those prisoners on that ship in the first place. Today, a quiet memorial stands on a hillside near Neustadt, overlooking the same grey water where it happened. Local communities have kept this memory alive for generations, laying flowers, holding annual remembrance ceremonies, refusing to let this story disappear entirely, even as the rest of the world moved on without ever learning it happened. Lübeck Bay looks peaceful now. Calm water, grey sky, gulls drifting over the surface as if nothing had ever happened here at all. But beneath that water, and within the memory of the few who still tell this story, more than 6,000 people who survived years of unimaginable suffering died within sight, within days of the liberation they had earned with everything they had left to give. They are not remembered the way the Titanic is remembered. They have no blockbuster film, no global memorial, just this water, just this silence, and now, just you, knowing their names were never written down, but their suffering was real and it deserved to be told. Remember the Cap Arcona.